little bit. I thought that was a shirt. What? All right, NFC West rivals meet for the third time this season. With only the second time ever in the playoffs, Niners won both in the regular season this year. Tonight in the rain, we get Geno Smith against Brock Purdy. But look at what Geno Smith's got to deal with. The 49ers defense has been led by Defensive Player of the Year favorite Nick Bosa, who had the most sacks in the NFL. His 13 games with a sack were the second most in a season in NFL history. He sat down with our Tori Zawacki Roy to talk about what changed this season.
When you play for a team like this, the number one goal is winning it all. I knew my training was top notch. I knew everything was top of the line, so I just thought of one thing I could make even better, and it was my diet.
My name is Ana Machado, and I'm a personal chef to Nick Bosa.
3 years ago, after reaching the Super Bowl and winning Defensive Rookie of the Year, it seemed 49ers defensive end Nick Bosa had already discovered his recipe for success. But a season-ending ACL tear in 2020 compelled Bosa to reevaluate.
It was an agent that contacted me and asked me if I would be interested in working for Nick Bosa. Nick told me that he wanted to up his performance. He wanted to do better in the way he was eating.
I just want to sack the quarterback, dude. Not as easy as it looks.
I'm Italian, so my mom would hook up the Italian food, pasta, all that good stuff, but I decided to make a change.
When you first started working together, how would you describe what Nick's diet was?
High carbs, pastas, rice, and proteins. But it would be home-cooked meals, but high in carbs. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna incorporate a variety of tuna, salmon only raw, grains. I cut down potatoes altogether.
I kind of cut most carbs out. I do a lot of raw fish, fruit and veggies. She juices for me every week, tons of salads.
And then he said, this is great. I feel energetic. I don't feel bulky, like lethargic, and let's continue doing that.
Bosa and his chef began to experiment with his meals. His carbs were cut in half. Dairy was out completely. Most portions contained 50% protein, 30% carbs, and 20% fat. For Bosa, who eats every 2 to 3 hours, the results were immediate.
I was just feeling much better. I looked a lot better. And then I came into camp this year knowing that I was in peak physical condition. Some of the nutritionists here kind of marvel at my diet and wonder how I'm able to keep it up. But
the nutritionists here are marveling at it. What do they say to you?
They just tell me to eat some carbs, you psycho.
Cortland Sutton is wide left, bunch formation right. Bosa comes in and knocks down Russell Wilson. His get-off was insane on that play.
Bosa, who says he now has the lowest body fat on the team at around 9%, is getting to the quarterback nearly half a second faster than he did his rookie season.
Dalton under pressure grounds the ball because Nick Bosa was right in his grill.
With 18.5 regular season sacks this year, that difference makes him a leading candidate for Defensive Player of the Year, a boost he attributes to cutting out nearly half his carbs and tweaking his pass rush stance.
My trainer, he's kind of turned me into a bit of a sprinter. I think when you have your hand back, you could really split your arms on the snap, so it propels you forward more so than if your hand was dangling here and then you have to bring it back to come forward. It's just straight out. When it comes to getting to the quarterback, I remember watching my rookie year, there's so many times where I was so close, and then you increase speed and strength, and you're getting there just a hair quicker, and that produces 10 more sacks.
All right, I took notes during that, and I wrote down cut carbs in half, no dairy. How do you feel about that, Rex?
Well, first off, I'm going to say this. I mean, he's going to be the NFL's Defensive Player of the Year. But cutting out carbs, not worth it.
I don't
Not worth it. Just safe to say, not worth it.
Not for many of us. All right. Kimberly Martin is in Santa Clara with more on two teams who are very familiar with each other. What can you tell us, Kimberly?
Good morning, Sam. Good morning, fellas. Look, if you're unfamiliar with Seahawks 49ers, you've been missing out. And this is how tight end George Kittle described it to me. It is two teams who do not like each other at all. And when they play each other, the games have physicality, big time plays, a lot of aggression, and, quote, some risky business, which is why Kittle told me, we know they're going to come in here with an attitude. In fact, we know the Seahawks are going to try to come in here and punch us in the mouth. And guess what? We're going to punch them right back. But up in Seattle all week, the Seahawks, I would say they've been a total vibe. I don't know if you guys have seen this viral clip of Geno Smith dancing in the facility with his teammates. You've got 71-year-old Pete Carroll riding around on a scooter with his Air Monarchs. This team is loose and confident. And guys, you want to know why? Because their players said, no one expected us to be here. No one thought we would have a shot at making the playoffs. So the last few weeks, we have just been playing like we have nothing to lose. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention the weather behind me, guys. We've been here since 5 a.m. The rain has been coming down in sheets, potential lightning later. It's going to rain throughout the game off and on. So not only do you have two physical teams, but they both have to contend with this weather, Sam.
Yeah, Kimberly. Matt, before we get to you complaining about the whole scooter thing and you not being able to ride a scooter when you're in Seattle, jealous of Pete, all that.
No secrets are safe with you.
Sorry, but what she was just showing, all that rain, do you think that actually impacts this?
Huge impact. I mean, ball security. I mean, we're going to talk about the offense. We're going to talk about the quarterback's ball security, but special teams, all of it. There's something you do in the NFL during training camp called the wet ball drill, okay? And you basically take all the footballs on a nice sunny day and you duck it into buckets of water and then you practice for like 10 minutes. 10 minutes in August. Listen, I played in Seattle. It rains a lot in Seattle. Anytime it was raining, where were we? We were practicing inside, okay? So I think this is a real factor. Who handles that the best? I think it is for the defensive side of the ball, too, because imagine the players that are tough to tackle, like a DK Metcalf or a Deebo Samuel, all these runners. It's very hard when the jerseys are wet, the pants are wet, and the whole wrapping up of things. You're not really wrapping up because your hands are slipping right off. It's more of a cut them down type of tackle in a weather like this, so you'd actually change your tackling technique too.
Well, the way that both of these teams run the ball, excuse me, I expect to see some misdirection plays because of the weather. But, you know, let me get to the game. The one thing that I look at is the chemistry between young Brock Purdy and George Kittle. Over the last 4 games, been able to connect for 7 touchdowns. I mean, you know, Kimberly Martin just showed us the weather. The weather will be a factor, but I do believe the way that Coach Shanahan is going to call this game, this chemistry right here that's been happening over the last month, he's going to find a way to get his tight end the ball in these conditions. So what am I trying to say? That the Seattle Seahawks are going to really have to tighten their defense up, mainly in the red zone, because that's where, if he's going to feature his tight end with all the magic that they've been making, that's where he's going to utilize him at.
Yeah, I agree, but I tell you what, man, can we somehow get this 49ers to a third and longer situation? Right. In other words, win on first and second down. And here's why it's so difficult, all right? And the reason I want to say it first off is I want to see Brock Purdy have to beat me, you know, in those type of situations, in a 2-minute drill. I guess what I'm saying, in a drop-back game. Yeah. Seattle, can you force them into a drop-back game? That's the only thing we haven't seen from this guy right here. Why? Because the Niners are so good with that running game. And each week is funny. Watch early in the game, fans, that they're going to sit out and they're going to run that zone play. That's everybody say, oh, that's all they do is run the zone. That's not true. That's how they start the game. Then they find out what front you're in, and then it's on. That's when Chris Forrester's been there, the offensive line coach forever. Yep. Anthony Lynn, by the way, should get another shot to be a head coach as the assistant head coach right there. They do a phenomenal job in a run game. That's what protects Purdy. Get him in a drop-back game. Let's see if he can do it.
If there's any quarterbacks that I'd want to watch to see how they react to playoff football, it's this game in terms of Purdy and also Geno. And just how you can tell sometimes where a quarterback's a little faster and they feel a little bit more pressure on the defensive side of the ball. It's like sometimes it takes some players to really just settle in and play your game through the first quarter. And the other thing I want to say is the Niners offense. I mean, we showed them in film wall all of the con man type of stuff, the misdirection and all of that stuff. That's harder to do on a wet surface, all right? If there's a lot of slipping, it's slowing me down defensively because of the weather is almost better against this San Francisco offense because all of a sudden, all of this isn't that fast. All of a sudden, I'm slowed down, and they're dealing with the turf also.
Yeah, and it's grass, and like choosing your footwear is a very important thing in a wet, rainy game. And you notice there when Kimberly Martin was there, they've got a tarp on the field. And Randy, you and I were joking about it, but a lot of times when you go out for pregame warm-ups, like, you can't go out because there's a tarp on the field. So you're basically making a decision closer to game time on like what shoes you're going. And sometimes guys will be like, no, I think these shoes are good enough. Then you get out there and you're like, no, I gotta make an adjustment. Usually there's not time to make that adjustment, sometimes till halftime.
Can you switch them whenever though?
You could switch them whatever, but like it's a little bit dicey. Guys get taped, some guys get spatted, meaning they tape their ankles over their shoes. So like having the tarp on, it's a little bit dicey. I would say usually you switch at halftime if you got to switch.
It's a huge X factor, and it looks like it's really coming down. You would think the Seahawks would get the edge in a rainy game, but if you're telling me that they go inside when it gets ready to practice, I don't know. Maybe Adam Schefter knows. Adam's got an update. What do you have for us?
All right, Sam, NFL officials are under fire again for their performance in last Sunday's playoff-shaping game between the Rams and the Seahawks. The Rams were upset about it. The Lions bothered by it because it cost them a shot in the playoffs. The competition committee is privately concerned about it, and the NFL has an explanation for it. Let's go back to that game last Sunday. There was a 4th and 3 where the Seahawks go back to punt, and the Rams are called on this particular play for roughing the punter when the player is shoved into him. It keeps alive a drive that essentially allows Seattle to keep the football and ends in a game-tying field goal. And then there's a play here where Jalen Ramsey's called for unnecessary roughness. There was a collision on the sideline, fine, but then DK Metcalf pokes Jalen Ramsey right in front of the official. Nothing is called there, and this has set off alarms with many teams around the league. Meanwhile, let's go today and flashback